Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are here at Steel City Arts Foundation this week with guest Steve Hofstetter. Steve, it's very nice to meet you. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well.
It's
Yeah.
you just gave us a little tour. Actually, you know what? Because we're doing the second half kind of right now.
Yeah.
But I didn't introduce Danny Kaufman, so let's definitely make sure we introduce Danny. Although by the time you listen to this, it'll be edited in, and Danny will be there. But I want to definitely make sure that Danny gets her due. But Steve,
Wait, you're editing her out?
No, we're editing into the second half. So
Wait,
yeah.
is she not really here?
She's
Am I like a figment of your imagination?
she's here for the practice run, and then we
lost.
change the voice out.
It's all photoshopped.
Yeah, she's a figment of your imagination right
like an
now.
emotional support dog, I guess.
Who is this Danny you even speak of? I don't even know what you're talking about. But Steve, you just gave us a tour of Steel City Arts Foundation.
I did.
And it was incredible. Danny, what are your thoughts on it? You just walked around with me.
I'm like blown away. I think that one of my favorite parts was the murals that you showed us.
Thank you.
And the other thing that I just noticed as you were walking us through like each room and the stage, which is beautiful, is everything has thought and intention.
Thank you.
And I really I'm blown away by everything that's here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like second or third thought.
Okay.
Like the first try was abysmal. And so I was like, well, let me do it this way. But, you know, we really wanted to make this a place where there's something interesting everywhere you look.
Mm-hmm.
That I've been to so many comedy venues, and the way that I got involved on kind of the business side of things was because at the end of a week, no matter where I was, I would always find myself in the manager's office talking to them about little tweaks, whether it was, hey, there should be a clock that people can see from stage,
Okay.
or hey, a lot of people are filming their sets now. Maybe have a little shelf so you don't have to lose a table to a tripod.
Right.
You know, or maybe have a tripod like one of those wall tripods where you just screw a camera into.
Right.
And just little things like that. And then it went from that to social media and to marketing and et cetera. And so this place is really just 20 years of trial and error, learning from my mistakes, learning from the mistakes of others, just what I wish I had when I was starting.
Yeah. It seems like, or it feels like it was put together by somebody who knows what they would like to see in a place.
Thank you.
It's like a player's coach kind of thing. You know, the former player that went and he knows, what they're expecting, and you could see
I
in
like
each
to
room.
think I'm still in the lineup.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could be,
Player manager.
Gordie Howe or whoever.
They haven't done that in like 30 years of baseball, but it's something that like everything from having a gym on site to to the ability to have a green screen that you don't have to set up each time, that you don't have to just be able to walk in front of something and film.
Right.
Just trying to make it easy for people. And
just having a backdrop even that looks professional, like just that enough makes everything look so much better.
Well, the thing behind you, and I think that your cameras could pick this up, very much looks like mail slots, but it's just it's for sound. So there's some things that like people get very confused when we shoot that way because they're just like, how much mail do you guys get? It's like, no, it's for sound to deaden. It's a studio thing.
I saw that too. I was like, I guess they're gonna be getting albums put in or something like that.
Oh,
No.
Like
they're
an
all,
old,
they're all different depths, and a lot of the panels are slightly diagonal. And what that does is basically it just eats sound.
Oh,
Like
okay.
Any sound that goes that way just stays there.
Yeah, that would make sense, I guess.
This is very profesh.
Yeah.
Very profesh.
Well, that's what I was just saying. Normally, like I was saying, we're here at Steel City Arts Foundation. Normally, we're at 565 Live, and it's beneath the Grill 565. And
You can hear the bar patrons.
yeah, you can usually hear it. There's at least one good thud where you're like, did somebody fall out of the bar stool and hit their head?
If it's a good enough thud, you gotta hope. You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's strange. I feel like when you hear a head hit the ground, it sounds different than like other things hitting the ground.
I think you and I grew up different.
Okay. I don't know. I feel like when I just remember playing like football and just somebody being tackled, and like you could tell when they got tackled backwards and their head hit the back. Like,
Well, I grew up in Queens, so I can definitely tell the difference between a gunshot and a firework.
Yeah.
Like that's something that every now and then people are just like, was that a gunshot? And it'd be like,
Yeah.
it's late June. Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's peak season for that now.
Exactly.
It's it's the time.
Yeah. Well, late May.
Kicks off
late
today.
May is gunshot.
Yeah.
And then as it gets into the June, it can be kind of both.
It's
Late June usually fireworks.
Okay.
Early July always fireworks. Mid July definitely gunshot. Or leftovers.
Yeah.
It could be. I guess it could be either.
Right.
Yeah.
But winter gunshot. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that almost never works out. You never see fireworks. There is that sweet spot from, for about a couple weeks. Although in Pittsburgh, I feel like that sweet spot's a little bit wider because they look for any reason.
And then every now and then you go, okay, car backfire.
Yeah.
Like that can still happen with a really old car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of have to play that game when you're in Kennywood's parking lot, too.
Yeah.
Fireworks.
That's a dangerous game to play.
That's all three in that parking lot.
Yeah, you can never tell. But you said you grew up in Queens then. So how did you get from Queens? I saw you went to school in Columbia, so obviously you're pretty intelligent.
Or
or you know someone.
Or I test well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
that's what smart people always say.
Well, it depends. It was one of those things I never got when people I test quickly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so because I know it or I don't. I never got the idea of people sitting there trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
The amount of times I've taken a test and had to sit there being like, how long do I have to sit here to make it seem like I didn't cheat?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I know it or I don't. And there's no maybe my head's going to find this if I stare long enough.
Yeah.
So you go through it, especially if it's like a multiple choice test or something like that. Those are just, it's quick. It is or it isn't. But anyway, that's a total side point. So I grew up in Queens, and a lot of people are curious, why Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I find that people who grew up here have a combination of both, anyone who's not from here is an outsider, and how dare you want to move here? But then also there's why would you ever want to move here?
Yeah.
It's a very there's this conflicting dichotomy that people have about the city. I love it. That's why I moved here, because I would tour here a lot. I've done shows at all the schools, some of them multiple times. I think I did a show at Carnegie Mellon my first year on the road.
Cool.
I used to play the Hard Rock pretty regularly, and and then after shows, I would sometimes hang out at Hambones, as all comics in the city did.
Yeah.
And so I got to know the city a little bit. And growing up, if you're not from here, you think Pittsburgh is this cold steel town in black and white where everyone's covered in smoke.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's one of the most physically gorgeous cities in the country, if not the most.
Yeah.
It is oh my God, the view from Mount Washington is so incredible.
Oh, it is.
And there's just rivers and bridges everywhere, and some of the bridges stay up. It's great. And so it's a nice looking place, but it's also it's got everything that a major city has, but the distances are small town distances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You get anywhere in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most places in less than that.
Yeah. Unless it's a Squirrel Hill Tunnel.
Yeah,
well,
20 minutes to that, because then you gotta,
Any tunnel, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I was
minimum.
about to say the pit tunnel isn't exactly.
Yeah, that's the one I'm the most used to.
Yeah,
that's the one I have the most spite for.
Jesse Jones. I don't know if you know Jesse Jones. Very funny comic. He once got caught in his own traffic.
Oh,
because he broke down in the tunnel.
Yeah.
No.
And he was able to there's this turnoff, and you're able to kind of go around, and then by the time he got in, there was traffic, and he was like, oh my God, this is my traffic. I did this.
Oh, it's like my nightmare.
Yeah, which is incredible. I mixed him up. Two different comics. Jesse Joyce was the one who did that. But anyway, I just want to give credit where credit is due. He caused his own traffic.
Jesse's and Ryan's and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I'm mixing stuff up. But I think the key for Pittsburgh for me is that it's a great place to be based as a comic.
Okay.
You are within once I started researching it, because I found the building, and Pittsburgh was one of 5 or 6 cities I was willing to live in.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do this. And so then I found this building, and I was like, okay, this is amazing. This is kind of perfect for what I want to do. And one part I didn't even show you is there's a detached 3-bedroom house that the grant recipients live in.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 comics at a time from all over the world
Yeah.
will come and live in 9 months at a time, and then they rotate out. Every 3 months, one rotates out and a new person comes in. And so that wasn't even in the listing. There was a bonus house. It was crazy.
Oh,
shit.
They didn't even include, because it was also this building was already, most of it was already fixed up.
Mm-hmm.
That house hadn't been touched.
Yeah.
And so, like, I understand how if they were trying to sell this just as a residence, that kind of didn't matter as much because that's where we had to do the most work. But in finding that, like, it's such a great place to be based because the research showed, like, it's a short drive from 18 other comedy markets, 18 other places that have a full-time comedy club. And that doesn't include every former mining town in Ohio that has, the Ramada does a show once a week. Like, it's not even counting that. It's just counting, like, full-time clubs. Not only that, but you're a short flight from 2/3 of the population of the U.S. and Canada. So if you're going to be based somewhere like this.
Yeah.
And it's also affordable. Like, for the price of a studio apartment in L.A., you can live like the mayor here.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that definitely makes sense. It is a hub kind of right in between a lot of major cities, and it's super easy for a lot of people. How did you get into having people get in here, like the whole philanthropy part? Because you said you moved here. You didn't move here. Or you didn't live here before having this building.
No. I bought this building to move here.
Okay.
Yeah. I was living in L.A. I was out in L.A. for about a decade. And, my career was going well enough. And then I had started a foundation in memory of my father. It's called the Martin Foundation. And that was pretty simple. It was a scholarship for comedians. Yeah. When I first started it, there was no other charity for comedians. There were 1,000 from comedians, where comedians are raising money for everybody, from Comic Relief to Laugh for Sight. I mean, they're amazing organizations, but no one was looking inward.
Yeah.
And we need it so much more than a lot of other industries because with the exception of maybe the top half of 1%, it's tough to make a living at this business. Yeah. And so it was something I had wanted to do when, my dad was a really charitable guy. We had no money. We grew up with I don't want to say with nothing. There are people who actually had nothing. But we grew up, subsidized school lunches, that sort of thing. But my dad was super generous with his time. He was the type of person who, like, our synagogue was holding an event, and he would go and, get all the soda and drive it over and, like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so he loved comedy. He loved that I was a comedian. And it was an idea I'd had for a while. And so when he passed, I was like, what am I waiting for?
Yeah.
I should do this. And so for years, it was just a scholarship that one comedian would win a year. It started off as $2,000. And then by the 5th or 6th year, it was 10.
Oh.
And most of it was just, I was selling shirts on the road after shows. That's how I raised most of the money. And then when the pandemic hit, instead of focusing it on comedians who hadn't yet had a chance, I changed it to a bunch of smaller grants for comedians who were working but had lost work.
Yeah.
Because the pandemic didn't affect open micers financially. They were already not making money. Whereas the pandemic destroyed a road comic's ability to live.
Yeah.
And so we ended up giving out 30 grants of $1,000 a piece. And the original premise
incredible, by the way. That's huge.
Thank you. The original premise of it was called the Friendly Shoulder Grant, because the idea was, here's a shoulder to lean on to get you through a tough time, because we thought the pandemic would be a month.
Yeah.
LOL.
And then it wasn't. And so $1,000 helped, but didn't make as big of a dent as we wanted it to. But
I mean, it's a nice gesture. It's more than it's more than nothing. I worked in a restaurant, so I understand, like, any little bit for anything was definitely greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it definitely helped some people, and it got them through to the time where they could figure out digital income and things like that. But then as my digital presence grew and my ability to fundraise grew and my ability to, sell tickets and self-fund things, I realized it was kind of the time. And also the pandemic made me realize that you can't wait around for shit anymore.
Yeah.
No.
Like the amount of, Ricardo Flanagan was a good buddy, great comic, and he died of COVID. And he was someone who, we did a digital show during the pandemic. We had him on several times. He was a fan favorite. Everybody loved him. And then one day he was just gone. And stuff like that makes you realize that, like, hey, this thing I'm talking about doing one day?
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah.
And so I started looking a little harder and found this building and pulled the trigger.
This is incredible. I'm so glad that you let us come here and just check this out.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Now, and I know everybody that I know that is a member here who comes here absolutely loves it. I was actually talking to 2 members, Ronnie Fleming and Mark Shimkitz, and I asked both of them, I was like, I'm interviewing Steve tonight. Is there something I should ask him? And they both immediately said, huge sports fan.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and now when you were walking around, you showed us the murals of the Negro Leagues, the Crawfords, and
the Grays.
The Grays. I'm reading the Grays on it. I'm like, why can't I think of it? But we saw those there. You saw the Jackie Robinson, the 42 Club, and you said your dad kind of influenced you with that.
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess comedy, baseball.
So those were, probably my dad's 2 favorite pastimes. Yeah. My dad was a huge Brooklyn Dodger fan. They ripped his heart out in '57 when they went to LA. But when my dad was growing up in Brooklyn, he was, a 10-year-old kid. It's 1952. Mm-hmm. And my grandfather worked at an electric store. And Roy Campanella was a big do-it-yourselfer. And so he was rewiring his house during the off season. And this is before these guys were millionaires. This is when they had winter jobs. Mm-hmm. And so he would come into my grandfather's store, and my grandfather didn't own the store, he just worked there. But he would come into the store, and my grandfather ended up helping him basically rewire his house. And so at the end of the project, Campanella comes in and says, hey, my grandfather's a very unassuming guy, huge Brooklyn Dodger fan, does not mention that to Roy Campanella. Mm-hmm. So he comes in, he goes, hey, I really appreciate all you've done. Is there anything I can do for you? My grandfather says, I know who you are. I got a 10-year-old boy who thinks the world of you. And Campanella's like, I got an idea. I'll come back. And at some point later, he comes back with a ball signed by the entire 52 team.
What?
5 Hall of Famers, 15 All-Stars, 3 of the best players the Negro League's ever seen.
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, and Joe Black all on the same ball.
Wow.
It's an insane amount of, even the coaches, some of them are Hall of Fame or were All-Stars. And so he comes back with this ball. And by the way, different color ink. Like he went around getting these signatures.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. He didn't just use his left hand.
No. This was like he went around to the team and got them all to sign it.
Yeah.
And so after my dad passed, it had always been a joke between my brother and I of like, who's going to get the ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when my dad passed, it wasn't funny anymore.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we didn't really know what to do. And meanwhile, Rick Sutcliffe, who was a broadcaster on ESPN, former pitcher, had tweeted about it was like Campanella's 96th birthday, and tweeted how nice of a guy Campanella was. And I replied, and I was like, you don't know the half of it.
Yeah.
And I told the story. And he retweets it. The president for the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, Bob Kendrick, sees the tweet, reaches out to me and says, we'd love to display the ball. And there wasn't even a second thought. It was like, this is what we do.
Yeah.
And so that ball now, not only is that ball in the museum, but there's the story is in it too.
Oh, awesome.
And the thing that people love the most is, my dad was a dork. Surprised that I'm from a dork lineage. And he kept the ball bag.
Oh,
and so not only have most people never seen a ball bag because it's, they haven't used those in, 50 years.
Yeah.
But the idea that he has the original bag it came in is nuts.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that people comment on the most about the exhibit.
Yeah.
Like, he has the bag? And it's like, yeah. And it was sitting in a sock drawer for 40 years.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That's perfect for something like that.
He never displayed it. It was just a thing that we had.
Oh, wow.
And so, that's just been a part of our family for a while. And so when I was trying to figure out the name of kind of our donor club, it was my 42nd birthday. My dad was born in 1942. His favorite player is Jackie Robinson, whose number is 42. Mm-hmm. And a little shout out to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It is the meaning of everything. And so we decided to make it, the 42 Club, and that's what it's been since.
That's so cool.
That's very cool.
Like you were saying earlier, and like Danny was saying at the beginning, there's a story with everything in here. It's really thoughtful and it's really interesting.
Well, and part of it is also the support we've gotten from donors and comedians. A lot of it is their idea too. You know, I started it, but at the same time, every little thing from like, there's a wipe-off board in the gym. I never would have thought of putting that in there, but people do that to both track their workouts, and also it's a fun communal, like, people will trash talk to each other.
Yeah.
They'll play tic-tac-toe over the course of a week. Like, it's fun.
Yeah.
And so even little things like that, that, you know, a member will come up with or a donor will come up with, you know, we're happy to add.
There was something I saw. It was like a TikTok that was, it kind of was a tour around here. And I commented that in your gym, it said it's fun to slap a sign.
Yeah.
And I love that because it is true.
Yeah.
You see that outside every gym, or Notre Dame, you know, play like a champion.
Yep.
You have to do it.
Yeah,
and I think before the gym
was me kind of mocking the whole like Notre Dame thing.
Yeah, it's perfect for it.
Yeah.
But you can definitely tell, like, on social media too, this is a very collaborative space, and you can feel that when you're in here.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's the hope. And, you know, it's something that we want people to realize, that stand-up is a solo art form, but there's no reason it can't be a team sport. And I think I get that again from, you know, I am a big baseball fan. And like I did a TV pilot years ago about the Negro Leagues. And when researching, and it wasn't just about the Negro Leagues, it took place in St. Louis in 31. And so it was like the Cardinals and the St. Louis Stars. And in researching for it, I learned a lot about kind of how weird the early days of baseball were, and how unorganized it was, and how I also learned that the Negro Leagues were not a league, rather like a series of like 8 or 9 leagues that would last for 3-4 years and fold, and then there would be a new league. And it was just like a collection of leagues that we now call that. But that's not, you know, there was the Negro National League, was probably one of the most successful ones, but there were a bunch of them. And so I started realizing that, like, the current days of stand-up, very similar to the early days of baseball. And people, you know, some people getting behind it as like, I'm a fan and I'm going to know everything about this. And then some people being like, this is stupid and I don't get it.
Yeah.
And that's where we are with comedy now. And I think with, you know, with podcasts and making it more accessible to people, with viral clips and stuff like that, I think more and more people are getting into it. And so my perspective shifted, and I started thinking about it as, we're not near the heyday of comedy yet. We're going through waves, and we won't be in the heyday of comedy until probably after I'm dead, because it takes a while for something to catch on that big. So, you know, we're in a good time right now, but yeah, the 50s were a good time for baseball. It's not nearly what it is now.
Right. Yeah. Huh, that's an interesting comparison. What? I was just... Oh, it was baseball.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I saw that you did something with Babe Ruth, or not with Babe Ruth, but about Babe Ruth for Fox Sports.
Yeah, I'm not that old.
Yeah. You look great.
I did. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm doing well for 107. But.
Yeah. But what exactly was that show? And I was really interested about it when I was kind of reading about it. Was it basically if Babe Ruth played now?
So, yeah. So the theory behind the show, it answers what people who like Babe Ruth will often refer to as the question, which is, would he be good now? Because there are a lot of people who will say, oh, no, he wasn't, you know, physically conditioned for now, and he used a heavy bat, which is something they don't do now. He never had to face black pitchers. Like, so how would he do now? And we went through and did a lot of research on it, and the answer is he'd be the best ever still. Because, A, he was physically conditioned most of his career. The footage we see of him is when we had footage, which is the last 3 or 4 years of his career. Any footage you see of him with the number 3 on his back was toward the end of his career, because the Yankees didn't used to wear numbers. So he was actually pretty physically fit for most of his career. The reason he ate like he did was because they thought it was good for you. They were idiots. He did what he was told to do. He didn't, you know, it's not like if someone said, hey, maybe you should eat a vegetable now and then. He would have been like, that's stupid. I want hot dogs. He ate a ton of protein because they said he was supposed to. They didn't know anything about weight training then. They didn't know anything about bat speed then. My favorite story that I learned during it was there was one day where he was in a slump, and he decided as a joke to use his teammate's bat. His teammate's bat was, I think, 10, 15 ounces lighter than his. He hit 3 home runs that day.
Oh, wow.
And they asked him about it afterward. And he said, yeah, imagine if I wasn't using that toothpick. But really, it's because you were using that toothpick. It's because you had greater bat speed.
Yeah.
And so there was a whole lot we learned about it. It was super fun. It was two things I'm really proud of is MLB Network liked it so much they actually aired it the day before the World Series.
Oh, wow.
And his granddaughter tweeted that it was the best thing that's ever been done about Babe Ruth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was, I was like, that's
please insane.
Tell that to everybody.
Seal of approval.
Yeah, I was like, that counts.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, because we did a lot of research. We did, and it was also fun. I mean, we had a good time with it. But it was, that was such a cool thing to be able to host.
Is that something you'd like to keep doing in the future, to find like a mixture of comedy and sports?
Yeah, I mean, it's something I do kind of on the side. I have a tendency to throw out first pitches.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Yeah, I just did one Saturday for the Washington Wild Things.
Was it a strike?
Yeah, that one was a strike.
Nice.
The couple before that were not. I'm about 50-50 right now.
Have you seen the Altoona curve? That's Danny's.
Shut up.
So
but
what?
It is. I am from
She's
Altoona.
From Altoona.
Okay, I was trying to throw one for the curve, and they said yes, but I was trying to get a show lined up so I didn't just have to drive to Altoona.
Yeah.
Makes
No
sense.
offense.
I get.
No
Listen, I get it.
But yeah, I was trying to have a second reason to be in Altoona.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh, I'm surrounded by trees. What else do I do now?
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
not much there.
Well, yeah, it's hard to find a decent venue there, but we're trying to figure it out. But yeah, I'm trying to throw as many as I can, especially because I started doing that when I was 35. And now I'm 43, and so.
What has been your best pitch experience?
There have been a couple that really stood out. The one I threw for the Rays went viral because it was unexpectedly good.
Oh, really?
I threw a cutter, not on purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that. Like when I was talking to the player who caught the pitch for me in Washington, I said, just a heads up, it's either gonna have a ton of movement or it's gonna have no movement, and I'm not in charge of that. Like I don't know why this is happening, but I threw one for the Rays that went pretty viral, but I think the one that meant the most to me was for the White Sox. Mm-hmm. So the White Sox have been my American League team since I was a kid. In the early 90s, real tough to be a Mets fan. So if I wanted to keep watching baseball, I had to find another team.
So growing up, you weren't even a Yankees fan. You were a Mets guy.
Oh, no, I'm a huge Mets guy. Still am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And those early 90s White Sox teams were so fun. Like Frank Thomas is still my favorite player of all time.
Yeah.
Robin Ventura.
He's in all those great commercials anymore.
Oh, well, that's such a shame. That is a shame.
The
that,
big
now most people know him as the guy from Eugenics. Well, no, not Eugenics. What is it? No, Eugenics is the wrong. That's the name of the horrible science. It's what's the? And I say
this
science,
is a test,
faux
Steve.
Science, faux science. It's you know what I'm talking about.
I can see it.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck,
whatever it is. Edit that part out, please. But the point is that
none of us got it.
a lot of people know him as like the. I was gonna say Eurythmics. No, a lot of people know him as like those awful commercials, but really he was one of the best players ever, and so exciting to watch. And so I got really into watching the White Sox.
Nugenics,
and then Nugenics. Yes,
what it
Nugenics.
Yeah. Got it.
That's so
Keep it
crazy.
in.
I never thought of that because like eugenics is a horrific concept. Like eugenics is the concept that like people based on their race or ethnicity have certain limits.
And
then Nugenics is
it's exceeding those limits.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, it's so bad. So thank you for knowing that. So and I'm glad I wasn't that far off. Why did I think
it's
that?
as close to
close.
that as possible.
Literally. Yeah. And I saw
it's like you're trying to mock it, and it's like eugenics, Nugenics, man.
Yeah, they're like this is the new version of of fake science. But anyway, so I got super into the White Sox, and they let me. Not only did I get to throw a pitch, but the reason I wear number 35 whenever I throw a pitch is because of Frank Thomas. And so I got to wear, his number was retired in Chicago, but I still got to wear 35 in a White Sox uniform with my name on it. And then they treated us really, really well. I went there with a couple other comics. I went there with Jeff Arcuri and Sam Norton and Emily Galati and just had the best time.
Yeah.
And then in the weirdest, it was like, couldn't have gone better. Yeah. It was, tailed right into the zone, like it had the right movement on it. I was really excited about it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the game, now 2 different major league pitchers, independently of each other, over the course of my life, have described my delivery as violent. They've both used that word. Yeah. A buddy of mine said that it looked like, and this is a very deep reference, but basically, if Chris Sale was a righty and didn't have a fastball, that's because Chris Sale's delivery is ridiculous, and apparently so is mine. So, but because of that, the Chicago Sun-Times on the back, like on the sports cover, on the cover of the sports section, put a picture of me. They didn't say comedian Steve Hofstetter, so they didn't say my name. They didn't caption it that at all. By the way, and this was a game where they came back to win in the 9th inning. I had no business being part of the story, but they had this freeze frame of my pitch where I had made such a ridiculous face that they put that picture on and it wrote game face as the and I was like, okay, that's embarrassing but also super cool. So that to me is the one that stands out.
That's one I feel like you need framed.
I was gonna say, you have it framed in your house, right?
I don't,
you
but
have
I have it. I don't have it framed, but I have it because it's such a silly
be a nice piece for in here.
I don't want this building to be about me.
We could see if we can get John to do a mural of your face.
Just to draw me with a dumb look on my face. It was just me. I mean, we're on camera, just me being like, it's awful. It looked like my elbow was about to snap. But it was so cool to be able to do that and to do it with friends too.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
They need to start getting the speed gun out there, whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, that way I could see if I'm throwing 57 or 58.
But I feel like it could be at least I don't know, some clout for you. It only counts if it's a strike, obviously.
I throw 50 to 60.
Yeah.
Like lately, I've been throwing a little slower, not just because I'm getting older, but because I'm getting older, I don't have as much control.
Yeah.
And so I take a little bit off of it in order to try to throw a strike more.
Yeah.
Because people in the stands can't tell the difference between 50 and 60.
Yeah.
And so, but they can tell the difference between one in the dirt and one over the plate.
Absolutely.
But I do try to actually pitch and not throw.
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference.
I'd rather throw a 60 across the plate than a 90 wild pitch.
Oh, there have been.
Me too.
I feel like that was real genuine, Danny.
It was.
Danny takes a little bit off for the first pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been some not so fun moments though.
Oh, those are more fun.
Which I think people would rather hear about.
For sure.
One was I think the toughest one was I'm throwing one for the Brewers. And sometimes the first pitch is not the only first pitch. Sometimes the first pitch is the 8th pitch or whatever it is because they have, sponsors or whatever. Yeah. But they had this kid go up before me. A kid with Down syndrome and stage 4 cancer.
Oh, no.
And they put him on before me. Yeah. Because, of course, I'm supposed to follow that. And this kid was adorable and such a sweetheart. Oh. And before his pitch, he just goes, I'm going to throw my spin ball. And everybody's like, what is that? And he spins around.
I love
then
it.
just kind of a little like dinky. Yeah. It can't, and the entire stadium is just like, oh, this poor kid.
Yeah.
We all love this kid. And then right after that, they're like, and now comedian Steve Hofstetter. I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. So that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Nobody cared about the gas you had on that pitch.
Well, and also I can't show this kid up.
Yeah.
It's not just like, look, if I could throw a 105-mile-an-hour strike, it wouldn't have mattered.
No. That would make it worse.
Yeah. Anything. I'm just like, no, I just want to know this kid. Everybody remember the kid? He was great, right?
Yeah.
He was great. Yeah, that was a tough one.
Was that the hardest performance you've ever had to follow?
Oh yeah, I think that was the toughest. I had to follow. I once had to follow Dane Cook in 2006.
Oh yeah,
and that was like when everybody was like nuts over Dane. Like that was very tough, and he was a surprise guest, so everybody went ape shit.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and now this guy, you've never heard of him, right? So yeah, there's you go through that sometimes.
Yeah. It's a good place to be. It's a good position. It's a good problem to have, I guess.
Yeah, that was a tough one. Oh, I was also showcasing for the Tonight Show that day.
Fuck.
Well, that's
In case you're wondering, I have not been on the Tonight Show. So.
Well, Well, I can't win them all, Steve. I guess I don't know.
No, you definitely can't.
But I mean, one major thing that I bet a bunch of other comedians don't have on their resume is you were nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. That's pretty insane to say.
Now, look, it's not like I stood a chance. It's not like I didn't even stand a chance to make the short list. So the way it works is basically anyone who is a professor of certain fields is allowed to nominate. And then, of course, there's also the nominating committee. And the nominations that don't come out of the nominating committee very rarely make the short list. Okay. There's a short list. So 200 to 300 people get nominated a year. I think the short list is like about 20.
Okay.
And then someone on the short list wins. And so, like, my name, there was no possible way of it was even getting press coverage.
Yeah.
It was a combination of a nomination from a professor who appreciated the philanthropy I was doing during the pandemic, and also a bit of a middle finger to the people who brag about their nomination, showing that, like, it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah.
And so I've had so much fun with it because, like, the week it happened, I was like, Marjorie Taylor Greene had said something horrifically anti-Semitic on Twitter because that's what she does. And I replied and I said, I don't know how many Nobel Peace Prize nominees have ever told you to go fuck yourself, but it's one more than it used to be. So I use it for that.
Yeah.
You know, that's the main.
What else are you supposed to use it for?
Yeah, that's the main thing. And I also use it to make people go, what now?
Yeah.
Because it's weird. But yeah.
So out of all your, I guess, philanthropy, comedian, actor, author, which one do you kind of resonates the most with you? Which one gives you the most challenge?
I'm a comic.
Yeah.
Like, first and foremost, I'm a comic, and I always will be. And, you know, the live performing, that trapeze act of trying to figure out what everyone in a room wants to hear at the same time.
Yeah.
Or figuring out how to make them want to hear the thing they didn't think they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
That's what I always want to do. And I love everything else, you know, and I love what it's afforded me, but that's my passion.
Yeah.
I'm a stand-up first and foremost. And, you know, there have been people who have asked, like, you know, is the foundation going to expand beyond stand-up? Because the vast majority of what we do is stand-up centric. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know that's going to be the core. That's always going to be the core. Mm-hmm. Because, and look, our members do all kinds of other things. There's one who's a cartoonist, and there's one who's a playwright, and, you know, there's one who's a screenwriter, and that's wonderful, but they're all comics. That's what they have in common. Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is because we speak each other's language. Like, there's something that when I meet another comic, I know how to communicate to them instantly. Yeah. And I can also tell when someone says they're a comic and they're not really a comic because they don't speak the language.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. And I don't mean like knowing comedy terms.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, the thing that makes someone a comedian is not knowing when to be on, it's knowing when not to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. You kind of were talking about having different, you know, the playwright or, you know, a cartoonist. You are starting a new studio as well, right?
Yes.
So that will help with more, you know, more than just the Steel City Arts Foundation. Can you tell us a little bit about Sunken Bus?
Yeah, so Sunken Bus Studios is another former church, because I'm collecting them apparently. I realized that, so I now own 2 churches.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my childhood home was turned into a Christian mission.
Oh.
So for those
keeping
score at home, I'm up 2-1.
Yeah.
But the point of Sunken Bus is, I mean, Steel City doesn't have built-in parking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there are quiet hours. There are certain things that we just simply can't do.
Yeah.
Whereas Sunken Bus is zoned commercially, has over 50 parking spots. Like, there's a lot more we can do. But the main reason for it is we shot a movie here in December, and I was so impressed with the crew. That crew, which was 95% local, was better than any crew I've ever worked with.
Oh, okay.
And I was talking to, so the producer was Brian Hartman and the director, Cody Hartman, his son, and they're both fantastic. And I was talking to them, and I was like, why don't we do more here? Because like half the year, they're traveling to LA or to New York or to Vancouver to shoot something.
Yeah.
And I was like, but there's so much we can do here. And so the original premise of Sunken Bus was, hey, if I get something that can double as an event venue, it can kind of pay for itself, and then we can use it to shoot. And so there's a workshop in it. There's, we're basically going to have production there. But that building happens to already have a state-of-the-art audio studio. Because it was the home of Audible Images, and now Red Cayman Media, who we already worked with, and we didn't reach out to them. Audible reached out to them about buying the place also, and Jesse Noss, who runs it, was like, "Hey, I don't want to buy the building, but I am interested in moving my operations there." And so then when I came in to buy the building, they put me in touch with Jesse, and I was like, it's literally the guy we're already working with. Yeah. This is insane. Yeah, he's one of the best post guys in the region. And so now he's building a full post-production suite there in addition to the audio studios, which are, they can record a chamber orchestra in there if they wanted to. It's huge. Wow. And so we're putting that all together under one roof and just making it this incredible creative space. And so the next movie we shoot, we can just edit back and forth and in the same building, which will be incredible.
That's cool wild. That something like that is in Pittsburgh.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So technically it's in Ross, but close enough. There are people who live an hour and a half from Pittsburgh that are like, yeah, I grew up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
No, you're barely in the time zone.
Yeah.
But
some people grew up in Altoona.
Yeah.
I know, they're the worst.
We'll make an allowance.
Yeah. Thank you. Honorary.
Yeah. Well, I say that as someone who's lived here for 2 years. So so there's going to be live event and, everything from people can rent it out for a wedding to, we already started booking some shows in the fall. We should be ready by late summer. There's a lot of construction to do. But we should be ready by late summer. And so we're starting to book for the fall just to be safe.
Yeah.
But my vision for that is when we open, we're going to do a crazy opening week where we're just going to lose a lot of money, but bring in some awesome comics.
Yeah.
Just so people in Pittsburgh who haven't seen shows like that can, and those comics can see Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
That's the idea.
Well, that's nice. Hopefully one hand will wash the other in that situation. And it's always nice, having a new venue, bringing people in who might not know it, having that good, taste in their mouth after the first one, and then hopefully they come back and see some of the local people or some of the, not as big name people.
Well, and they'll be able to open.
Yeah.
That's the fun part. The foundation is a 501c3 and Sunken Bus is for profit. And I own both of them, but we're doing things right. There's a board of directors for Steel City. And so I can donate space at Sunken Bus to be used by people at Steel City, and then we can vote on it as the foundation and use it to raise money, and it all works. It all works in concert.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I really like that it's, something local, something that should help a lot of local people, too.
My favorite thing is when people not from Pittsburgh or who haven't lived here will comment on Facebook or on YouTube or whatever and say, why is it called Sunken Bus? And I'll just say, Google Pittsburgh Sunken Bus.
It's iconic.
And you'll find out.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. You could have a whole, a whole studio, a whole line of studios with just bus accidents that have happened around the city.
Absolutely. We're actually talking to the wreckers from the city about getting one of the buses that's been decommissioned
no way.
and sinking it into the hillside
so
that it just becomes this monument to sinkholes.
That's so cool. I was going to ask if there's going to be a mural.
Well, there are already 2 murals. We just put 2 murals in the building, same artist.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one on one side says stand up and the other says make noise. Mm-hmm. And the premise is, it's a shout out to the arts, but it's also a reminder to people to, silence never changed anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're also trying to get, we haven't gotten it yet, but we're trying to get the township's approval. There's one hill that we want to make it say not Hollywood. So like the Hollywood sign, just with not in front of it. As a little hey, we know what we are. This is the Rust Belt, baby.
Yeah.
This isn't Hollywood. This isn't glitz and glamour, but this is good art, and that's what we want people to know.
It's not Hollywood by choice kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, where can everybody find you, and anybody who wants to see one of your stand-up shows or anything like that, where can they find that information?
So just at Steve Hofstetter. I perform in Pittsburgh pretty regularly, but I'm also all over the country and also Canada, and I'm about to announce a big Australia, New Zealand tour for the winter as well, because it's summer there. And they could just, at Steve Hofstetter on pretty much any social media, except I don't really tweet anymore because it's such a cesspool now. But for a while, I loved it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, Steel City AF is at Steel City AF on everything. Sunken Bus is at Sunken Bus on everything. And, come follow along and check it out sometime.
Can I ask about Teeny Fest before we go?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when is this going to air?
Tomorrow, probably.
Tomorrow. Oh, perfect. Right before Teeny Fest.
Yeah.
Yes, I should plug that. Thank you for asking, because I completely didn't plug the biggest thing that we're doing right now, even though it's called Teeny Fest. So Teeny Fest is a comedy festival that is modeled off of how the rest of the world does comedy festivals. America is really the only place that does like these long shows for comedy festivals. Usually it's an hour, and the reason it's an hour is because you want to watch more than one in a day. Yeah. And so the opening show is mine. That's a more traditional American style show, 90 minutes. But then on Thursday, we have 2-hour-long shows. On Friday, we have 3-hour-long shows. Someone can buy a pass that gets you into every show.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So if you want to go to basically more than 2, you should get the pass, because that'll be cheaper. And the shows are short sets within short shows. So it's, kind of ADD comedy, but also it is a way for you to see a lot of different talent very quickly.
Yeah.
And each of the shows also is themed, and the premise of these themes are to highlight the diversity of the comedy scene in Pittsburgh. In days past, and it's not true anymore, because Arcade's doing wonderful things, Bottle Rocket's doing wonderful things. Like, there are these places that are actively courting diversity, but the scene here could be a little bro-y for a while. Mm-hmm. And so what we wanted to do is show people that it ain't like that anymore. And so one of the shows is specifically, it's called Queer We Go, and it's specifically an LGBTQ plus show. Mm-hmm. And there's a show called Where the Boys Aren't, and that's a women in comedy show. And there's a show for, Black comics, people of color. There's a Jewish show that's, I think, the most inventive format, because it is Eben Parker is producing it, and he created this thing where it's comedians doing regular sets, but then there is a Jewish grandmother who is judging them.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I get to play the Jewish grandmother, which is so fun. It was going to be John Bander, who has done the Montreal Comedy Festival for improv and does character work, and then he got a corporate gig. And so I was like, can I be the grandmother, please? And then there's one that's just homegrown, which is just a tribute to Pittsburgh comics. And so it's just going to be just a fun mix of awesome comedy styles, and it's all at Hop Farm Brewery, so local craft beer and and good food, and it's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, there's so many good breweries around here who are really helpful with the comedy community.
Yeah, the thing I love about Hop Farm though is it's a separate room.
Oh, nice.
So it's a devoted space. You get no noise from the bar.
Wow.
It is, and also it seats 140. So
wow.
A lot of brewery shows are like, oh yeah, we got this private room. It seats 20 people, and 7 of those are going to be on the stage. So, and also there's no stage. 7 of those are going to be on the floor area that we're calling a stage. But and also what's great about Hop Farm is they really let us do it right. Like when we came in and we pitched them doing shows there, immediately the owner was like, well, I don't know how, so you guys set it up how you want.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I asked, I was like, is it okay if we put a stage here? Could we do that? And he just goes, do whatever you need to do to make a good show. That's what we want. Yeah. And that is so rare from a venue.
I was going to say, that is perfect to
Seriously.
hear. There are so many venues that are just like, kind of like that chair over there. And they let us do it, and it's been great. We've probably done about a dozen shows there now, and we've got a couple others coming up. We're bringing in Gianmarco Cerezi, who's a great New York comic who's gone pretty viral lately. He's coming to do a show in mid-June, and we're trying to do as much of that as possible because, again, we want to show comics the scene here.
Yeah.
And, we want them to know what we're doing, and we want people to see there. One of the things that we are trying to add with this foundation to the Pittsburgh scene is mentorship. Mm-hmm. There's the vast majority of comics who live in Pittsburgh are look at the guys who have been doing this 5-7 years and think they're the veterans. And when someone pops, they move. Mm-hmm. And so, we're trying to encourage more mentorship, more stay put, give back. If you did move, come back, talk to people. And there are some comics who are doing that here, but we want more of that. And so the more we can bring in folks like Gianmarco, we brought in Mary Santora, whoever we can bring in and introduce them to the people who have been in this for, 1, 2, 3 years, that's only going to help them.
Yeah.
For sure.
Oh, that's awesome, Steve. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you so much again for having us in here.
Absolutely. I'm glad you like it. Thanks for being so nice about it.
Oh, yeah. It's awesome. It's so good. All your shows, I see them all the time. You always put really good shows on with some really, really funny people. We've been lucky enough to meet a lot of them. And, they're all really, really quality, so I can't recommend it enough.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. This is cool.